Hi, I'm the Rambling Photon, and I wanted to talk about the Ghost in the Shell movie, the new one, and how it relates to the old one, and also to today's political climate. So, for those who aren't aware, the new Ghost in the Shell movie has had some controversy surrounding it with regards to some casting decisions and things like that. But we'll get to that a little bit later. So, first of all, spoiler-free review for you. The new movie is okay. It's decent. I would put it at a 6 out of 10. The problem is that they make a lot of design decisions that affect the overall quality of the movie, but none of them would actually break the movie on their own. They're just sort of the little straws that end up building up to break the camel's back. The CGI was mostly pretty good, except for just a couple of scenes that you could sort of tell that it was CG. Also, again, this has to do with some of the plot deviations from the original. Just little changes that end up degrading the overall impact of the events of the movie. So, that's my sort of non-spoiler review. In a nutshell, I would say not as bad as I feared it could be, but not as good as the original. So some of the themes that were examined in the original movie involved what makes a human human as opposed to an AI. What is the difference between the two? And of course, the way that it asks the question, poses the question, is that the puppet master is an AI, although it doesn't like to be called that. So there's a theme of creation, or of that question of what makes people unique, and this is also sort of posed by having the main character be entirely cybernetic, complete cyborg except for their brain. And the reasons for this is not delved into in the original, and there's nothing wrong with that because it's not relevant to the question of what distinguishes a person from an artificial intelligence. What makes humans special. Another theme that is mentioned briefly is the importance of flexibility and evolution. And this is something that I think sets the old movie apart from the new movie. So this is a theme that is brought up a couple of different times by the characters. So first by the Major and Togusa, and then again by the Puppet Master and in the conversation with the Major. So what caused a big controversy with the new movie was the casting of Scarlett Johansson as the Major, and this was a big deal because of whitewashing or some such. And in this case, I don't really care personally. It's something that doesn't make sense. To me, what's more important is that the source material is properly represented and properly adapted. And because the character is entirely cybernetic, the physical body matters the least about the character. So you could have had it played by Scarlett Johansson, you could have had it played by literally anybody, as long as they look kind of like the Major, and it would be true to the source material. There are also a lot of iconic sequences from the original, but as I said earlier, there are sort of a lot of little changes that removed some of the impact of those sequences. Also with the new movie, there are a number of sequences that I thought were heavy-handed. There were parts of the script that sort of felt like I was being beaten over the head with a stick with plot points. And there were a couple of scenes that were just not necessary. in a similar fashion. Now, that being said, I think Scarlett Johansson did a very good job. Her physicality really lent itself to the role. And not just in action sequences, not just those parts of the character, but just, for example, the action of walking. She portrayed very distinctly, which I think was a very interesting choice. The fundamental problem with the new movie is that they changed the antagonist into a human. And I think that it changed the fundamental question of the series, or of the movie, from what makes a human distinct from an artificial creation, and what gives you your humanity, and change the question into what gives you your identity. And I think it makes some sense for the political climate nowadays, but I think they made a couple of mistakes with that. It changes the scope, and I think the answer ended up being cliche. The whole "you are what you do" thing that has been, floating around for ages now. So because of that restriction of the question to be less impactful, it makes the movie as a result less impactful, because the villain is not a new entity. It is not a new operational form of life in some sense. It doesn't challenge the humanity of the main characters in the same way that a completely artificial character does. Now, also, it leads to an issue with certain actions taken by the main antagonist don't make as much sense. So there's certain aspects of the ghost hacking of some of the earlier characters, the sort of minor villains, and the action. Some of the action sequences they make less sense in the new context compared to the old context, because the Puppet Master was basically known for hijacking people's ghosts. It made sense for him to take over other people and use them as puppets, right? Hence the name. But in the new movie, it's not made clear the whole idea of ghost hacking and what that means and why they can do it. And it just doesn't feel as connected to the rest of the movie. Now, there are a couple of little things that I kind of liked about the new one that are just little things that made it a little bit richer. So the first was that Togusa still has a mullet. I'm a fan, in the sense that I want him to be consistent with the original source material. Not that I actually like mullets. And the second thing is, they showed how Bato got his eyes. And that's something that I think did add something. It was a nice touch to add to the movie that was not in the original. So it wasn't a complete degradation, but I think in general it was worse than the original movie. So on the whole, I think good sci-fi is really defined by the quality of the questions that it asks the audience. And I think on the whole, the original movie was better because the questions that were posed were deeper than the new movie. I think the new movie was a bit shallower and suffered because of that. And so, on the whole, the first was better. So those are just some of my thoughts on the new Ghost in the Shell movie and some of the issues that have surrounded it. Hope you'll join me for some of my thoughts on other topics. I'll be rambling about random shit. Catch you later.